Well, I know that the world's supposed to be around, but I'm not so sure about this part.
How can a pressurized system exist next to a vacuum without being blown off into space, not sucked off into space, blown off into space? And of course, Nathan Oakley has covered this beautifully. We even got the soundbite of the physics professor saying, well, you know what's going to happen if you put a vacuum. In fact, it's right here. Let's play it just for funsies.
They did. I've got a video out from an MIT professor that explains that if you have gas pressure next to a vacuum and you don't have a barrier, the gas fills the space.
And so I do happen to have said MIT lecture, so let's watch together so we can verify what this professor is saying.
All right, let's try another pretty simple process. Let's just take a gas in some volume, V, and over here is going to be vacuum of equal volume, and we're going to remove the barrier. You know what's going to happen spontaneously, right? The gas is going to fill the available volume once it becomes available, right? The gas is going to fill the available volume once it becomes available.
So it seems they do know this, Wiggles.
Yeah, Wiggles. Boy, that Wiggles is a piece of work, isn't he? Well, but don't you think the professors would know this? It's like Nathan said that 6, 7, 8 times in the show. It's like, and then he goes, "Well, you're sounding like you're a record repeating yourself." You know, it's like, oh my God.
I love to see comments, people saying why does Nathan always yell? It's like Nathan doesn't yell until he has to.
Oh man, he gets pretty brutal though. Did you hear the one he did with Mick West?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was entertainment gold, man. It was great.
Oh man, it's beautiful.
I love when he counts. This is the 3rd time I've said that. This is the 4th time. This is the 5th time in this conversation I've said that. It just keeps going. And again, their answer to this question is the same as the guy across the street. They'll just say gravity, as if that makes a difference. Now all of a sudden all these tests that this guy's talking about, is he pretending in a world where there is no gravity? I don't get how gravity...
In a world.
Yeah, really.
In a world without gravity.
Don't you just love that argument though? And I did listen to that whole debate that you've got rolling there. That argument that wouldn't the professors have figured this out by now? And it's like, well, first of all, we're discussing it. So yes, we the professors, we the scientists, and by the way, you don't have to have any sort of credentials to be a scientist. All you have to do is have an open mind, be objective, and follow the scientific method. That's what defines you as a scientist. But so we the scientists have figured it out. But at the end of the day, their answer must be gravity. And so, you're saying that the weakest of all natural forces, hypothetically, is behaving as essentially a barrier to separate a near perfect vacuum from the upper atmosphere. And really the best, and I use the term loosely, but the best argument that I've heard against that particular point was, again, from Greater Sapien. And basically, he's just kicking the can down the road. He's saying that there is no area where you've got a pressurized system next to the vacuum. It's a gradient. So you start at the lower altitudes and you've got 14.9 pounds per square inch. And then above that, it's slightly less pressure. And above that, it's slightly less pressure, up to the point where that gradient goes to a vacuum. But I'm sorry, that doesn't solve the problem. It's just kicking the can down, or well, really kicking the can up to the higher levels. It doesn't solve the issue.
Nope. Okay. So let's elaborate on that then a little bit. What Nathan is talking about, and obviously the example that the professor gives is he takes a pressurized system and puts it next to a vacuum of equal area, right? Now, let's put this into context. Now we're talking about the Earth with its, pressure system, but it is next to a vacuum void that is literally infinite from what they tell us, right? And the Globers will try and downplay this by saying stupid shit like, well, like Wolfie 6020, right? Well, I got 32 pounds of pressure in my tire here, and I'm going to go ahead and double it up with that. See, it didn't explode or anything like that. It's like, that has got to be the most ignorant thing ever. Now, here's where the deceit is. The deceit comes in when they scale it down and they get into the torr range. Now, the Globers would have you believe that it is the very same thing to go from 29.4 psi and cut that in half to 14.7 psi as it would be going from 14.7 psi to 0. Now that sounds logical, it sounds reasonable, but it's deceptive as hell. How do I know that? Well, first of all, because we have these vacuum chambers, right? If that was all that is, then we could make vacuum chambers out of anything. We could make them out of rubber tires like Wolfie would propose. But instead, what we see is places like the Sandusky vacuum facility, right? The NASA's big facility. And those walls are several feet thick, made of concrete and steel. Concrete and steel. And they are chambers within chambers within chambers to keep, get this, to keep any type of air or any molecule or particle at all from literally going through the concrete and steel, right? So anybody that says that there's the same amount of energy required, going from 28 to 14 and 14 to 0 has been duped by this very intentionally deceptive scale. That's why, 1 atmosphere is 760 torr, right? But here's something to kind of accentuate that point, right? Here we have the Mythbusters, right? And they set out to prove that they could lift a car at around 3,000 pounds, this vehicle is, with nothing more than a standard household shop vac, okay? With very little suction power at all. Now, this is absolutely extraordinary because what this demonstrates, and we've all seen the heavy equipment that have been used to lift those, 30,000 pounds or 15-ton pipes, right, with just a vacuum, right? So what it really comes down to is an effective seal, right, that will demonstrate the power of a vacuum. So what they've done here is they have made 3 boxes and they have contoured them to the hood, the roof, and the trunk so that they could get a good seal. And then all they did was they took this everyday shop vac and they turned it on and they were able to lift up this car, no problem, right? Anybody can see this. It'll be in the show links, right? So
wow, that's a regular shop vac. Oh my goodness.
That's all it is, man. So